Hello and welcome to today's study. Today's Isaiah chapter 2, part 2, which is verses 6 up till verse 22. And so this section is titled in the NIV as the day of the Lord. Yeah, so as I said, this section is titled the day of the Lord in the NIV, and in the NCV it's titled as a terrible day is coming, and which both most often symbolize the end of days or judgment day. Or, well, in the context of Isaiah, this may be referring to the exile. But in certain parts, it could refer to a time closer to our present time, either in our future or even in our present or past. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 6. You, Lord, have abandoned your people, the descendants of Jacob. They are full of superstitions from the east. They practice divination like the Philistines and embrace pagan customs. So this verse says how God left Israel because they turned away from him. And instead they turned to the practice of the east. They adapted things that the pagans did. And they tried to do things like the Philistines did, like telling the future, which is divination. The land is full of silver and gold. There is no end to their treasures. The land is full of horses. There is no end to their chariots. The land is full of idols. They bow down to the work of the hands, so what their fingers have made. Once again, this shows that when they got too rich and thought too highly of themselves, they forgot God. So people will be brought low and everyone humbled. Do not forgive them. So Isaiah says that he is so ashamed and so disgusted by their wickedness. He asks God not to forgive them. Go into the rocks, hide in the ground from the fearful presence of the Lord and the splendor of his majesty. People will flee to caves in the rocks and to holes in the ground from the fearful presence of the Lord and the splendor of his majesty. They will flee to caverns in the rocks and to the overhanging crags from the fearful presence of the Lord and the splendor of his majesty when he rises to shake the earth. So that was verse 10, 19, and 21. So all three of those, even though they're not exactly together, they all talk about it's Isaiah telling them, go and hide, because when God comes, it's going to be very bad to go and hide from his anger. Verse 11. The eyes of the arrogant will be humbled, and human pride will be brought low, and the Lord alone will be exalted in that day. So the NCV says, proud people will be made humble, and they will bow low with shame. At that time, only the Lord will be praised. And so Isaiah prophesied both about biblical times and also about our modern era, or at least some parts seem applicable to us. Just before the exile, the proud people would have been made humble by the enemy armies. They had to bow down to their enemy king. And at this time, those proud people won't be praised anymore. Only God will receive praise. In modern times, there are movements and even a whole month dedicated to being proud of sin. And whether it is sin or not, still, it's about being proud. And when the Lord comes, they will all be brought low. They will bow with shame because they said he doesn't exist. Just imagine if you say that something doesn't exist and then they come. Imagine how shameful you will be, how low your pride will be. And on that day, only God will be praised. The Lord Almighty has a day in store for all the proud and lofty, for all that is exalted and they will be humbled. Or the NCV says, the Lord all powerful has a certain day planned when he will punish the proud and those who boast. They will no longer be important. Well, this verse basically explains itself. The proud and the boastful will be punished on the day that God has planned. And so the word proud in this case would imply that they are too proud to ask forgiveness from God. There are, but there are certain instances where some people are willing to turn to God and to give up their pride and to accept their wrongs. But it says that these people won't. For all the cedars of Lebanon, tall and lofty, and all the oaks of Bashan, for all the towering mountains and the tall high hills, for every lofty tower and every fortified wall, for every trading ship and every stately vessel, the arrogance of man will be brought low, and human pride humbled. The Lord alone will be exalted in that day, and the idols will totally disappear. So here we have the two pictures. So one is the one on the left is the cedar trees in Lebanon, and the one on the right, the great oaks of Bashan. And so both trees are massive trees and somewhat important as well. And God says He will bring them down. So 13 to 18 gives like a list of the things that God will bring down. And I'm sure there's more as well, but it's just shortened to these. So the cedar of Lebanon, the great oaks of Bashan, the tall mountains, high hills, tall towers, high strong walls, trading ships and beautiful ships. And then the proud people will be made humble. All the idols will be gone. But as we have learned, idol doesn't always mean a statue of something. Timothy Keller mentions in his book, Counterfeit Gods, an idol is anything more important to you than God, anything that absorbs your heart or imagination more than God, and anything that you seek to give you what only God can give. So, an idol is anything that you give more attention to than God. If you give your job or even your loved ones more time and attention than God, then they are idols. Which is why statues may actually not be idols. If a statue is purely for decoration, just for show and just to add imagery, and is not given honor, not given time, not given attention, not given love, it's just there, then it's not really an idol, it's just an ornament. And one thing that Timothy says in this, he says that what you seek to give you what only God can give. That's very important because we can seek things from people that people can give. That's fine. But seeking something from a person that only God can give, then that person becomes an idol. In that day, people will throw away to the moles and bats. They are idols of silver and idols of gold, which they made to worship. And so it says, at that moment, they will realize the worthlessness of their idols, whatever they might be, and throw them and turn to God in fear. Recently, there were actually some images of people in India throwing their statues into the river because they had not answered their prayers for this virus. Certain people said no, that's actually a part of the Indian culture, but I'm not familiar with it, so I'm not going to say much about it. Verse 22. Stop trusting in mere humans who have but a breath in their nostrils. Why hold them in esteem? So it says, people can't save you. People can help, but only God can actually save you, especially from this dreadful day that is coming. Turn to God to be saved, so you will be safe and secure in His mighty hands, away from the destructions and punishment of the wicked. And the question to be asked here is, would you rather be judged by the world but accepted by God, or accepted by the world and judged before God? So yeah, if you're here now, you can unmute and ask the question, or you can even type it in the comments below or just send it to me via Discord. So next time, we'll be looking at Isaiah chapter 3, which is titled, God will punish Judah and Jerusalem, or Judgment on Jerusalem and Judah.